Hey everybody, Scout Crafty here again. It's TGIF. It's Friday, the end of the week. You made it through another week. We got a couple things to get to today. We had a severe rainstorm again yesterday. Over 24 hours of rain, another 3 inches. That's a lot of rain falling here. At least we won't have to worry about the reservoirs being full, right? In fact, yes, I did get water through my box, and a couple people were always asking about that. Let me address that real quick. I shot a little video last night while it was coming in. Let me show you. Okay, I know a lot of you get a kick out of this because you say, oh my God, aren't you worried about the water in it? No, that's just where the wiring comes in. The wiring makes no difference if it gets caught in water because there's obviously water under the ground when the wire's there. But when the wire comes into this box, it runs up to there. You see that? That's where my panel is. Now, if there was water coming out of there, whole different situation. Okay, so you can see it's nothing to worry about, nothing to see here. It's really not a big issue. But we got, like I said, a few things to get to today. First thing I want to do, I'm really excited about the challenge for this month, and that is to build your own screwdriver. The more you make of it, the better the project will be, the more you will revere it. Our goal here is to try and really come up with something that's homemade, a homemade screwdriver made by yourself, and that'll be, I'll have more information about the challenge coming up, but it is due by the 1st of May. Is the cutoff date. But today I want to show you you will have to attach your screwdriver somehow to your handle. And I want to address that because today we're going to talk about how to attach your screwdriver shaft to the handle. Let's get started. Okay, next up, I'm really excited about this make your own screwdriver contest. It's going to be a lot of fun. Now, a lot of you are going to be fastening a shaft, hopefully homemade shaft, into a handle, and some of you are going to use a bolt, which is threaded, which is great. Some of you are just going to use a regular shaft. We'll talk about that in a minute if you're just using a regular shaft. But a bolt, if you're going to use a bolt, you're going to want to have a good amount, at least about 1 inch of threads, because for the simple reason that with a screwdriver there is torque that if you're loosening something, and that's usually where you're going to have your issue, you know, when you turn to loosen it, because that'll loosen up the threads here. So you want to have a good 1 inch of threads that is epoxied in there, or you can use JB Weld or something like that. But that should be enough to hold it. However, I'm going to show you if you want to make a heavy duty screwdriver, a screwdriver that, you know, you're going to be using for rough work. I'll show you how to pin it after we epoxy it. But I'm going to show you, first of all, now we're going to epoxy a couple. I got the handle for the hammer we're going to epoxy in. We're going to epoxy in the shaft here. Now, the first thing you have to do, and it's super important, is this must be immaculately clean. The best way to clean this is with an alcohol. Because alcohol is almost a thinner for the epoxy. Now, the best kind of alcohol you could use for this is like a denatured alcohol. However, you can use regular isopropyl alcohol. I would suggest like a 90% you can get easily. And wipe this down with the alcohol, get it really clean, and also wipe down the inside, get it really clean, and do it a couple times until it comes up clean when you're doing it with your Q-tip or your rag, whatever. But it's got to be immaculately clean, and then let it dry. Now, you might think that just by spraying a little bit of alcohol on there and letting it dry is enough. No, you got to go in with a rag. Like, see, I have a piece of paper in here that I'm going all the way down to the bottom of the threads. I've already sprayed some alcohol in there. Now, watch what happens when I take this out. This is, you're going to see the dirt that comes up from it because it gets in the threads, in between the threads. And you're going to see what it looks like on this piece of paper as I thread it out. Now, see all that? Look at that. That is what would have stopped adhesion from the epoxy. And you got to do that a couple times until you get nothing, until it comes out clear. This cannot be overlooked. It's got to be extremely clean. Another consideration that you might have is the type of epoxy you use. The longer the cure time on your epoxy, the stronger the epoxy. So if you get those 30-second or 1 minute or 5 minute epoxies, you might think they're strong, but they're nowhere near as strong this is a 30-minute epoxy. It takes 30 minutes. Now, they even have epoxies that take even longer to dry. Now, if you notice here, it sets up in 30 minutes, but the cure time is 8 to 12 hours. Okay, this is a very strong 2-ton epoxy. It's very hard to get, and the same thing with JB Weld. JB Weld is very close to this. It's probably a little bit stronger because it has fibers in it that help, but this will be fine for what we're using. And let's mix up a batch, and I'll show you how to put it onto your... Now, we mixed up equal parts, and we mixed it really good. The important thing is you're going to add the epoxy to the inside threads of your handle. You're also going to want to have a rag handy that's doused with alcohol, because a lot of this will eventually come out. So what you want to do is you want to get it in here, coat the threads. Okay, now I drilled this hole extra deep so that, because I knew I was going to epoxy it, so I drilled the hole extra deep so that when I screw this in, any additional epoxy will go to the bottom. If you make your hole too shallow, what's going to happen is the epoxy will have nowhere to go and will create a hydraulic lock and kind of force itself out. Now that you have that in there, okay, again, you don't have to coat this because all the threads are coated there. You're going to screw this in like this, and when you screw it in, as you're screwing it in, go back and forth a little bit to coat the threads. You see what I mean? You go back and forth, just get it in, and then you might see some ooze out the top, but that's why you're going to have a paper towel with alcohol. You can see it's getting tight now. I still have a lot of room, but I can feel the epoxy gripping all the threads, and then get all the way down until you can't go down any longer. And then if you can, give a little tightness, put this in something and give it a, make sure it's nice and tight, and then wipe this with your alcohol rag. Okay, now we're gonna let this sit overnight. I'm gonna put this just in a warm area, not, a cold area. Let this sit overnight. I'll be back in 12 hours, and then I'll show you how we're going to pin this. Okay, through the magic of time-lapse photography, it's been, look at that, completely dry. It's been 12 hours, and now this is completely dry. You see here? This is not going anywhere. However, because this could be used in a high torque situation, we are going to pin this, okay? As for the hammer, this here, and you can see when I pushed it out, some of it oozes out on the bottom, but that's okay because, like I said, this is, again, this won't go anywhere because it's really not a high torque situation. You're hitting here. There's really not high, and this was really screwed in tight. I did this really tight, so this is good to go. It won't require any pinning. You could pin the top, especially if it was just a rod going in. You'd have to pin the top, but like I said, this isn't going anywhere. But let's work on pinning this, and I'm going to show you all about pinning. Now, when you're going to pin something, it all depends on how much torque is applied to the item that you're pinning. This here, it's a little bit, not nowhere near. So it's not like you have a machine or something that has to have a strong pin. But so if you had a machine or something, you would have a thicker pin. The thicker the pin, the stronger the pin. Also, the different materials. Brass doesn't have a shear load that's as high as steel, and so things like that you have to think about. Then there's different types of pins that you could put in. They have a blind pin, which you drill a hole here, but it doesn't go all the way through, so it's blind on one side. You have a through pin, which is what we're going to do, so you can always tap it out if you had to. Although this really is fine with a blind pin. You could do either way if you didn't want to see it from one side. And the other one is a tapered pin, and they use tapered pins for different machinery. We're not even going to get into that because we don't have the right drill bit to do it. So we picked out some, what you want. A nail makes a fantastic pin because they're readily available. You cut this off, and you have your pin. A piece of brass rod makes a good pin. But the main thing is that when you do it, you have to get the right drill bit, that this becomes almost like a press fit. So when it goes in there, it's going to be almost a press fit, and then you're going to peen the end over and get it nice. Now, depending on where you want to put it, on this screwdriver here, this goes all the way down to here, but I want to put it in that groove because I don't want to be touching it. If it was here, I would feel it. So I want it in that groove. It'll be recessed and hidden. So we're going to put it in the milling machine. I'm going to show you why we're doing that. Here's the setup in the milling machine. We pretty much centered over here. We're going to turn this on. Okay. There we go. We drilled a hole directly in the center there. You see that's a 1/8 inch hole, through hole. And now we have a piece of 1/8 inch brass rod. This will be a press fit. When we get this in there, we'll be able to bang this down. What we have to do now is we have to cut a piece of this the same diameter as this round here, and then we'll bang it in. And usually you can glue it in, or you could peen it over so it won't fall out, but there's a bunch of different ways. Okay, there we go. You could put now you could do that with a file. You could take it down with a file. You could take it down with, I put it back in the lathe, and there we go. Now that's pinned. That'll never turn. That'll never come out. And that's just one of the ways to pin your screwdriver when you do it. Okay, next up, you remember last week I pointed out a couple of old Sears electric books that I always use, electrical wiring books that I went by, and a good friend of the show who goes by the call sign CJB1KCB1 said there's a really good manual by H.P. Richter you should check out. So, of course, I listen to you guys because, believe it or not, you know, I've learned more from you than you have from me. So I went online and I picked this up, the 9th edition, and what a great book. I paid probably about 16 bucks total, $10, $5.60 tax, whatever. But look at this book. This is just fantastic. Everything you would want to know about electrical wiring and whatnot. It's chock full of great diagrams and photos, and just absolutely fantastic. So thanks so much for this recommendation. I was looking through it before. I was getting caught up. I had to put it down because I'll just sit here for hours reading this stuff. It's just absolutely phenomenal book. It's in such easy to understand language, and everything you could need to know to burn your house down, for me. Anyway, again, it's the book here is called Practical Electrical Wiring, and the author is H.P. Richter. There's a bunch of them out there on eBay. If you're interested in learning any kind of electrical, this is a great addition. So thanks again for the recommendation. Okay, next up, good friend of the show by the name of Javier Cruz, who's out of beautiful New Mexico. I always want to go to New Mexico. I just think the terrain out there is absolutely beautiful. Javier wrote me a letter. He loves calipers, and he bought a lot on eBay, and he was going to restore them. And he dumped them in vinegar, as a lot of us do, if they're rusted up or whatnot. And he had like 10 of them. When he pulled them out, 4 of them had broken. And you know where they broke? Here. The spring barrel. You see on top here? Now, and he did some research, and apparently this is a thing. If you expose this part here to a vinegar dunk, I don't know if it's the hydrogen molecules or something that weakens this, and this breaks. When you lift it up, it'll be in 2 pieces. You know, it'll be broken and on the bottom of the box. So I thank you so much, Javier, for letting us know, because a lot of us do. I usually dunk these in Evaporust only because they're kind of an instrument. You know, I save the vinegar for the heavy duty stuff, for the jacks and the vices and things like that, because I got a 5-gallon bucket. But I've used it on everything. I never had an issue. So that's something to keep an eye out for and to avoid. And again, Javier, thank you so much for telling this, because, you know, we never would have known that. Has anybody else experienced that kind of problem? Now, like I said, apparently has nothing to do with the steel. It's only the spring section here. This part here will snap. And that's kind of strange, huh? So Let me know in the comments if you've ever heard of it, because I did look it up and it is a thing. I looked at Garage Journal and they said, yeah, a couple guys had broken their calipers by dunking them in vinegar. Isn't that something? So be very careful of that. I don't know if Evaporust will do the same thing, but you know, I just want to put that out there. And again, thanks Javier for letting us know. Okay, next up, last week when we did these two antique tools, one here is a twisted wrench, one is a pipe wrench. I didn't really go through the history because I kind of grabbed them down here. It was a spur of the moment thing. I did a little research afterwards, but my good buddy Reggie on the road across in the UK has the same exact wrench. That's pretty, you know, something that he would have it. Now this was a patent date. His has a patent, and mine is missing that on top. It always was, but it's February 27th, 1883 was the patent date. Reggie he has a couple books that show it, a couple advertisements. I'm going to put a link to his video at the end of this video. You can check it out, and he has a whole history on these two wrenches that I thought was pretty interesting. And again, Reggie, thanks for that. So link in the description. Next up, sometimes I'm going to store a wrench for a while, and you know, that I'm not going to be using right away, and I want to put it up in the collection until I get a place where I can display them all. And how I do it, what I do is I have in here, I have 50-50 mineral oil and Vaseline. Okay, and I have it into it's a very good mix like this. And what I do is I wipe down my, and this is great for any of your tools that are going to be exposed to the elements or whatever. And it's also good for your hands when you're doing it, so you don't have to worry. It's nice to have a lubricant or a solvent or anything that you can use in your hand. That's why I'm a big fan of mineral oil now. I use it all the time. Anyway, I wipe down the wrench like this, get a good coating on there, and then I take a piece of, this is they used to use a waxed paper years ago when they were in the military and Cosmoline, but this is my poor man's way of doing it. It's like a brown paper, and I wrap up my wrenches in here like this, and then I put it upstairs in a bucket, and again, it's wrapped in, it's coated with the 50-50 Vaseline and mineral oil, and then I put it like this, and that'll go into a bucket, a sealed bucket upstairs until I need it. That's a good way to store some tools that you might not be using for a while, and that's what I'm doing with these two. Okay, so in closing, we had a lot of stuff to get to today. I had to drop a lot of stuff wound up on the cutting room floor. Sorry about that. I hope you have a great weekend. We'll see you again on Monday. Take care now. Bye-bye.